Have you ever looked in the mirror and wondered, is this really who I've become? Not in a dramatic way, but in that quiet moment when you feel like something's slipping, as if you've been doing everything right, yet slowly fading in the background. Here's the truth. Most men grow older thinking attraction fades with youth, but the most magnetic older men, they don't rely on flashy looks, status, or chasing attention. They carry a calm intensity. They walk into a room without needing to speak and people feel them. They've mastered something deeper, the art of presence. And that's what this video is all about. We're not here to sell you skincare routines or style hacks. We're diving into the 7 timeless secrets that make a man more attractive as he ages. Not because of surface-level changes, but because of who he chooses to become. Backed by Stoic wisdom and modern psychology, these insights will change the way you show up in every room, every conversation, and every relationship. So if you're tired of being overlooked, and you're ready to become the kind of man she can't ignore, stay with me till the end. Because this might just be the shift you've been needing. Confidence is the most attractive accessory. There's a quiet power in a man who doesn't need to announce himself. You feel it when he enters a room, not because he demands attention, but because he doesn't. His energy is grounded. His steps are deliberate. He speaks when he speaks at all, with measured calm. And suddenly everyone else leans in. This is true confidence. Not the flashy kind we see plastered across billboards or acted out in loud voices and exaggerated gestures, but the still kind, the unshakable presence that doesn't beg to be noticed because it already knows it belongs. Confidence for the mature man isn't something you wear. It's something you embody. It's not built on status, appearance, or the approval of others. It's built through hardship, through knowing who you are after everything has been stripped away. It's a quiet resilience, a deep familiarity with your own worth. Think about the Stoics. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who wrote nightly reflections about virtue and mortality, not to impress others, but to keep himself anchored. Epictetus, born a slave, taught that our dignity doesn't come from what we have, but from how we carry ourselves. These men knew confidence isn't noise, it's silence that doesn't flinch. In a world that constantly tells men to prove themselves, Stoic confidence does the opposite. It doesn't need to prove anything. It knows. And the surprising part? Others feel it, especially women. A man who carries himself with calm assurance makes people around him feel safe, seen. His presence signals stability in a world filled with emotional chaos. You don't have to speak over others to be noticed. You don't have to dominate the room to lead it. A steady gaze, a strong yet relaxed posture, and an ease in your own silence say more than words ever could. Let's be real. When we talk about attraction, we often rush to the superficial. Muscle tone, jaw lines, fashion trends. But those things fade, and quickly. What lingers, what stays, is how a man makes you feel. And the man who walks slowly, listens deeply, and speaks only when he has something true to say. He changes the atmosphere. If you want a simple example, notice how some men give off alpha energy without ever raising their voice. They walk into a cafe, and without a single word, people make room for them. Why? Because they don't shrink themselves. But neither do they inflate, they just are. Their calm creates a ripple, Confidence like that is cultivated, not performed. It comes from knowing what you value, from choosing self-respect over performance, from being rooted in your principles, not swayed by praise or criticism. So here's the truth. You don't need to be the loudest man in the room. You don't need to be the funniest or the most charming. What you need is to be centered, present, grounded in who you are. How do you build that? It starts with small things. Stand a little taller, breathe a little deeper, pause before you speak, not to delay, but to make sure what you're about to say matters. When someone talks to you, really listen, not to respond, but to understand. When you look someone in the eye, do it without aggression, but with unwavering clarity. Let them know you're here, you're not distracted, you're not trying to win. You're simply not afraid to be seen. That's magnetic. Confidence is not found in noise, but in calm. Not in control over others, but in mastery over yourself. And when you walk with that kind of energy, you don't chase attention. You attract it, naturally. In the Stoic way, a man is not made by how others see him, but by how he stands when no one's watching. That's the kind of confidence the world remembers. Refined, effortless style. Let's talk about style. Not trends, not fast fashion, but real, refined, effortless style. The kind that doesn't scream for attention, but commands it quietly. There's something magnetic about a man who dresses with intention, not desperation. As we age, the most attractive style doesn't come from trying to look younger. It comes from owning who we are, clearly, unapologetically. You've probably seen it before. A man walks into the room, no flashy colors, no trendy logos. Maybe he's wearing a simple black coat, perfectly fitted. His shoes are clean. His grooming is precise. And suddenly, people pause. Not because he's trying to be noticed, but because he's so comfortable in his own skin that he doesn't need to try. That's the difference between style and fashion. Fashion chases validation. Style reflects identity. Stoic wisdom reminds us to remove what is unnecessary, to live simply, to cut through noise, and to let our essence shine without artifice. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life." The same is true for your wardrobe. Very little is needed to reflect your quiet confidence. Just clarity, precision, and authenticity. This doesn't mean you have to wear suits every day or spend hours on outfits. In fact, quite the opposite. The Stoic man simplifies. He curates. He chooses neutral tones, clean lines, and fabrics that last. Because he understands what you wear is a signal to yourself first, and to the world second. If your clothes are too loud, too trendy, too desperate to impress, they often say the opposite of what you intend. They say, "I'm not sure who I am." But the man who refines his style to match his maturity is the man who moves through life with quiet dominance. Think about this. When was the last time you saw someone over 40 in streetwear designed for teenagers and thought, "Wow, that guy really knows himself"? You didn't. Because chasing youth through clothes doesn't make you young. It makes you invisible. The key isn't to blend in or to be loud. It's to be grounded. A clean watch, a signature jacket, clothes that fit, not too tight, not too baggy, groomed hair, trimmed beard, polished shoes. These are not just aesthetic choices. They are habits of presence. They tell the world, I pay attention, I care, I respect where I am in life. And let's talk about grooming. Not vanity, just self-respect. You don't need to hide the gray in your beard or fight the lines around your eyes. These are not flaws. They are marks of a life fully lived. When you wear them with pride, you become something more powerful than youthful. You become timeless. Minimalism in fashion isn't boring. It's stoic. It says, I don't need noise to be seen. It says, I'm not trying to escape myself. I've made peace with who I am. In the end, your presence is the loudest thing in the room, not your clothes. When you refine your outer world to reflect your inner world, you don't just look good, you become unforgettable. Take care of your body, but don't obsess. There's something powerful about a man who moves with quiet strength, not the kind carved by hours chasing a six-pack, but the kind that radiates from his posture, his breath, his ease. Let's get one thing clear. Taking care of your body isn't about clinging to youth. It's about honoring the vessel that carries your mind and spirit. It's not about being jacked. It's about being well. You don't need to be the strongest man in the room. You don't need to run marathons or bench double your weight. What truly captivates people, especially women, is something subtler. The way you sit, the way you stand, the way you move without tension, without apology. When you walk into a room, your body tells a story before you say a word. Are you tired and slouched, dragged down by stress and excuses? Or are you grounded, upright, with shoulders back, not forced, not performed, just rooted? Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. That's the essence of taking care of your body as an older man. Not for vanity, not for praise, but because self-respect demands action, not excuses. Start here. Are you stretching in the morning? Are you walking daily, even just 15 minutes without distraction? Are you fueling your body with intention, or just reacting to cravings and chaos? These aren't just health choices. They're daily rituals of presence. The modern world pushes extremes. Either you obsess over your appearance, counting every macro, tracking every rep, or you neglect your health entirely, pretending it doesn't matter. But Stoicism offers a third way, a path of balance. You train, you move, you nourish, not because you're chasing someone else's ideal, but because discipline is dignity. And women notice, not just your muscles, but the energy behind them. They notice when your handshake is steady, when you pick up a bag without grunting, when your breathing stays calm in a crowded room. That's real masculinity, not force, but foundation. There's something deeply attractive about a man who's physically present in the world, who can sit with stillness, who can walk with strength, who can lift, move, and stretch not as performance, but as habit. And here's the part no one tells you. The older you get, the more your health becomes your presence. People can see it in your skin, in your eyes, in your energy. You don't need to chase perfection. You just need to stay alive in your body. You don't have to make your body your identity, but you should make it your ally. Not because you're afraid of getting old, but because you're wise enough to prepare for it. Train, not to impress, but to endure. Eat, not to sculpt, but to sustain. Move, not to dominate, but to remain vital in the life you're building. That's not obsession. That's reverence, and that's the kind of energy that speaks before you say a word. A signature scent. The invisible legacy. A man walks past you. You barely notice his clothes. He says nothing, yet something lingers. A trace of scent, barely there but unforgettable. It wraps around a memory, stirs an emotion, and suddenly, he's not just a man, he's an impression. That's the quiet power of a signature scent. You see, in a world driven by visuals and noise, scent is the silent language. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It stays long after you've left the room. It can't be explained, but it can be felt. And for the mature man, this is more than cologne. It's identity. It's subtle authority. It's a message. I know who I am. We often underestimate how primal scent is. Long before we developed language, our ancestors used smell to detect safety, danger, familiarity. Even today, a certain fragrance can bring you back to your grandfather's study, your first kiss, a summer evening decades ago. Scent skips logic and speaks straight to memory. So what does this mean for you? It means you don't need to own a drawer full of fragrances. You need one that's yours, one that feels like home on your skin, one that doesn't follow trends, but reflects essence. Refined, calm, grounded. Choose a scent that feels aligned with who you are becoming, not who you used to be. A warm tobacco and leather blend for the man who spends quiet evenings reading. A fresh woody note for the man who rises before dawn and walks in stillness. A hint of spice for the man who speaks less but always leaves people thinking more, and when you wear it, don't drown in it. The right scent isn't sprayed, it's revealed. It's discovered when she leans in, when she hugs you goodbye and pauses just a little longer. When days later, she catches it on her scarf and thinks of you. Marcus Aurelius never wrote about fragrances, but he understood the idea well. He wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." A signature scent works like that. It bypasses surface interaction and leaves a path straight to emotion. This isn't about seduction, it's about remembrance. You don't have to be loud to be unforgettable. You just have to linger. So ask yourself, what scent would they remember you by? Not in a bottle, but in a moment. Because in the end, people forget the words, but they remember how you made them feel. And sometimes, that begins with nothing more than a breath of something beautifully. You Tauntern 5, a sharp mind and deep conversations. The quiet flame that captivates. Let's get something straight. Good looks fade, muscles weaken, hair grays. But the mind, the sharp, alive, curious mind, that's what truly captivates. In a world obsessed with aesthetics, few realize that intelligence, when carried with humility, is magnetic. It doesn't shout for attention. It draws it. Not with noise, but with depth. A well-read man walks into a room and doesn't need to impress anyone. His presence speaks for itself. He listens more than he talks. And when he speaks, his words don't try to dominate. They invite you to think, to feel, to pause. This is where true attraction lives, not in flexing intellect, but in sparking connection. Think about the people you've truly remembered in your life. Was it the one who had the perfect smile? Or the one who made you feel seen, challenged your thoughts, and left you replaying conversations long after they ended? Women especially, those with depth themselves, are drawn to men who carry substance, who read not just for knowledge, but for nourishment, who aren't afraid of silence because their mind isn't a void to be filled. It's a garden they've tended quietly for years. A sharp mind isn't about throwing around big words or debating every topic. It's about presence. It's the ability to sit with someone, ask a meaningful question, and truly care about the answer. Seneca once said, "As is a tale, so is life. Not how long it is, but how good it is what matters." That applies to our conversations too. A 2-minute talk with a man of insight can have more weight than an hour-long speech from someone who only speaks to be heard. So how do you build this kind of depth? You make time for reflection. You read with curiosity, not obligation. You observe. You journal. You think before you speak. You welcome opposing views without needing to win. You cultivate wisdom not to appear wise, but because you value truth over image. And something incredible happens when you do. Your conversations change. They shift from shallow banter to soul-level dialogue. You stop asking, "What do you do?" and start asking, "What moves you? What keeps you up at night? What are you learning from this season of life?" You stop trying to be impressive. You become interested. And that shift, that's what ignites lasting attraction. Because now you're not just seen, you're felt. So let the world chase charisma. Let others chase clout. You chase depth. Because in a culture starving for real connection, the man who brings thoughtfulness to the table will always be remembered. You don't need to be loud to be loved. You just need to be real. And the sharpest minds? They're never sharp just to cut. They're sharp because they've been honed by time, truth, and a quiet refusal to settle for the superficial. Age with grace, not fear. Why time makes you more magnetic, not less. Aging is not a curse. It's not something to be fought, hidden, or fixed. It's a privilege, a silent badge of survival, growth, and self-understanding. And the man who embraces his age with grace doesn't fade into the background. He becomes unforgettable. You see, we live in a culture that worships youth. Botox, filters, endless tips on staying young forever. But Stoic wisdom whispers a different truth, that real power isn't found in resisting time, but in walking alongside it with dignity. Marcus Aurelius aged while ruling an empire. Seneca wrote some of his deepest reflections near the end of his life. None of them tried to chase youth. They chased clarity, and that's what made their presence timeless. A man who owns his age doesn't need to explain himself. He doesn't show up trying to compete with 20-somethings in fashion or fitness. He shows up with presence, with a kind of quiet confidence that says, "I've lived, I've lost, I've learned, and I'm still standing." That strength, unshaken, unrushed, unbothered, is irresistible. It's in the way he speaks slower, but with more weight. The way his eyes have seen both triumph and pain, and reflect both without bitterness. The way he carries himself, not to impress, but to embody something stable in a world that constantly changes. There's a reason people turn to older men for advice, why some of the most compelling characters in stories are the wise elders, not the flashy heroes. It's because time, when embraced, softens what needs to be softened and sharpens what matters most. Aging with grace isn't about surrendering. It's about choosing what you no longer need to carry. The need to prove yourself, the fear of being overlooked, the impulse to please everyone. You become like a mountain, still, grounded, and impossible to ignore. So here's the invitation. Stop fearing your wrinkles. Stop trying to run from the gray in your hair or the changes in your body. They're not flaws. They're poetry. They're the verses of a life deeply lived. The Stoics didn't ask how to look younger. They asked, how do we live well, knowing that time is limited? And the answer wasn't in cream, surgery, or denial. It was in presence, in showing up with full awareness, in giving up the chase for approval, and stepping fully into the man you were always meant to become. Because the man who ages with fear is easy to ignore, but the man who ages with grace, he commands the room before he says a word. Master the art of mystery and depth, the silent magnetism that keeps her curious. In a world where everyone overshares, the man who knows how to hold something back becomes magnetic. Not because he's playing games, but because mystery, real mystery, is a signal of self-control. We often confuse openness with honesty. But the truth is, you don't need to spill your life story to be real. In fact, the more you reveal too soon, the less space you leave for others to lean in and want to know more. A man of mystery doesn't hide. He simply doesn't feel the urge to explain himself all the time. He chooses what to share, when to share it, and with whom. That's not manipulation. That's mastery. Stoicism teaches us to be slow to speak and quick to observe. Epictetus said, "Be silent for the most part, or if you speak, say only what is necessary." That doesn't mean you become distant or cold. It means you speak from a place of presence, not performance. And when you do that, people listen. Especially women. A mysterious man becomes a story waiting to unfold. His calm energy, his composed demeanor, his thoughtful pauses, all of it draws her in without effort. She doesn't just hear his words, she studies his silences. It's the way he glances but doesn't stare. It's the way he smiles with his eyes more than his mouth. It's the way he leaves moments hanging in the air, unanswered, open, intriguing. And this goes deeper than attraction. Mystery taps into something primal, the desire to explore, to discover. Women don't want a man who lays all his cards out in the first conversation. They want to slowly peel back the layers, to feel like they're learning something real, not something rehearsed. So how do you develop this kind of presence? It starts with comfort in your own skin. When you no longer seek validation, your energy becomes still. When you stop needing to be understood by everyone, your words become fewer, but more impactful. When you allow yourself to carry a private world within, people naturally want to step inside it. Read deeply. Think slowly. Respond intentionally. And above all, remember that mystery doesn't mean withholding affection. It means offering it. With intention, not as a performance but as a gift. Let her wonder. Let her ask questions. Let her feel like she's discovering you, not being pitched to. Because here's the paradox. The man who rushes to impress ends up forgettable. But the man who speaks with quiet depth, who lives by inner standards and keeps a little of himself unspoken, that man lingers in her mind long after the conversation ends. You don't need to hide. You just need to stop proving. Mystery isn't about being unreachable. It's about being unshakable. And in a world that's loud and needy, that kind of calm self-possession is rare, and anything rare is valuable. A Roman habit that modern men forget. There's a story, one that never made it into most history books, but echoes through the Stoic tradition. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, ruled an empire during war, disease, and betrayal. He could have had artists write his glory, poets sing his strength, or scribes document every moment of his reign. But instead, he wrote to himself. Every morning, before battle cries or council meetings, he would sit alone and journal. Not for the world, not for followers, but to remind himself, don't be deceived by applause. Don't run from pain, don't forget who you are. He called it his meditations, but they weren't meant to impress anyone. They were survival, anchors, quiet conversations with his own soul. And what does that tell us? That even the most powerful man in the world understood this truth. A man who cannot sit with his own thoughts will always be enslaved by the opinions of others. In today's world, men chase visibility, likes, attention, image. But the Stoic man chases depth. He carves space for stillness. He builds a world within so rich, he never needs to perform for one outside. Maybe you're not ruling an empire, but you are ruling your life. The question is, what do you say to yourself when no one else is listening? Because who you are in those moments, before the noise, before the mirror, before anyone validates you, is who you truly are. Conclusion: the quiet power of a man who knows himself. So here's the truth, plain and simple. Being an attractive older man has nothing to do with chasing youth. It has everything to do with embracing who you are right now, without apology. No flashy moves. No need to prove anything. Just a steady presence. A quiet strength. A man who walks into a room and doesn't need to speak loudly because his character already speaks for him. It's in the calm of your voice. The way you look people in the eye. The way you carry your age like a badge, not a burden. This isn't about tricks. It's about timeless truth. And here's the final insight. Women and the world are drawn to men who've made peace with themselves. Because that peace, that grounded confidence, it's rare. It's magnetic. It's unforgettable. So as you move forward, ask yourself, what truly makes me magnetic? Not in the eyes of the world, but in the core of who I am. And if this video stirred something inside you, if it didn't just inform you but reminded you of who you're becoming, then stay on this path. This channel isn't for the distracted. It's for the men who build in silence, who lead with depth, and who live by principle. So if that's you, subscribe, share this with someone who needs it, and walk into tomorrow with calm strength and purpose. Because we don't just chase attraction here. We become the kind of men the world remembers, without ever needing to be loud.